Welcome to the Perfect Your Perfect podcast, where my main goal is to connect with inspiring individuals all across the country and allow them to share their journeys that have brought them basically just to where they are today and identify how they're living and discovering their unique purpose. I'm your host, Danica Tramburg, and today we have Madison Dorenkamp with me. I'm so excited to have you on. I've missed talking to you. Can you just tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. Okay, everyone, I am Madison Dorenkamp. For those of you that don't know, I was Danica's roommate at Miss USA. That is how we met. That is how we became friends. Clearly, we're still friends, so that's amazing. If you ever wondered how pageants actually it went well. Clearly, we're all good. I recently moved to Florida from Colorado. I run a couple of different businesses. I just, live life on beating to the tune of my own drum.
I love it. And I've been so eager to ask you about your move to Florida. So how did that transition go? And I guess what prompted you to make that big move? Because you're from Colorado. I mean, you've been there definitely as long as I've known you, and before then. Your family's there, and I know how close you are to your family. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So I, like everyone else, you're in quarantine, and I've always wanted to move to the beach, which makes pretty much zero sense because I'm not a really good swimmer and I don't really have any beach skills other than sitting.
You have a husky for a dog.
Yeah, and I have a husky, once again, beating to the tune of my own drum here. And I have a friend here in Florida that I had worked with years ago. The first time I came to the part of Florida that I moved to, I had only been to Florida one time prior, which was to Miami last year for swim week. Didn't love Miami. No offense to people in Miami, but it's not somewhere I would want to live. It's a great place to visit. Mm-hmm. So I came down here, hung out with my friend Carrie, and was kind of and then we went to downtown Fort Myers, and it was adorable. And I was just like, I could live here. And then I just kept thinking that I could live here. And then I booked another flight back in July or August. And we were sitting there and I was like, I'm going to move. I mean, it's something that's a really big deal, but there's just something in my personality sometimes that I'll think about something for a little bit. And I'm like, let's stop thinking and start doing. It can't be that hard. And I moved down here on October 1st.
Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. What a whirlwind. And I think that's so true. You can plan and think for so long. And that's the same thing with me wanting to do a podcast. I mean, I thought about it, analyzed it, critiqued everything, and all of a sudden it's a year later and I haven't done anything. And it's well, sometimes you just gotta go for it. Even if it's not going to be perfect or you don't know exactly your direction. Sometimes just going for it's the best thing you can do. What do you think you were most scared of moving to Florida?
One more time, my brain just doesn't, I don't know what it is. It doesn't comprehend fear very well. Oh, I can always move home. Obviously I am super close to my family. So that was challenging. The day that I moved into my place, my brother's wife had another little girl. So I got another niece legitimately the day I moved in here. So it was interesting not to be around and not to be as close, but I mean, it's nothing for me to fly home. And even I've teased my dad. I was like, you've heard me speak so much more. You've had to listen to me so much more than I would have if I lived here, because now you have to drive to Denver to pick me up. So then he is trapped in the car with me for 3.5 hours. And I'm like, oops. I don't know. I guess the whole fear thing doesn't really kick in. I get lonely. That's one thing I will say is and I've been single the entire time we've known each other. People float in and out, but I haven't been in a serious relationship. So I have moments of getting lonely and different things like that, but I'm just going to live in my little bubble.
What do you think you would tell someone if they were optimistic or pessimistic, I should say, about moving or making a big transition in their life?
I would tell you if it's something that you think about more than one or two times, you should do it. Especially if you're young. I don't know what it's like to have kids and have a bunch of a mortgage and a bunch of responsibilities, thankfully, but when you're young, like you can always go back. Like I don't have too much pride. Like I'm not saying that I won't move back to Colorado at some point or to somewhere else, but like I don't want to be 90 years old and be like, wow, I really should have been that person who tried to do something or like have a little fun or do something a little different or whatever else. Like the question I've gotten from so many people is like, what are you going to do down there? You're braver than I am. And I'm like, it's just like distance.
You're not moving to another country where it could be a little complicated.
And I am your girl who had never been, this is just a perfect perception of my personality. I had never been out of the country. And in college, I was 19. And if anybody's ever been to Southeastern Colorado, you would understand that you're not very well aware of the world. Like you're just, I love the area, but you haven't been around diversity whatsoever. I didn't even know I had never drove on an interstate till I was 19. So like, just really got to think about this for a minute. And I decided I was just going to study abroad. Just made the executive decision that I was studying abroad. I did not know, like for Johnson & Wales, they picked like based off your GPA and all these things. Well, I originally wanted to go to Spain. So I picked the Spain trip, got on the Spain trip. Then my brother decides to get married. So I was like, okay, we're going to have to switch that because now I have to be here for a wedding. So there was room on a Costa Rica trip. And I was like, cool, put me on. Don't care. I had never flown alone. I had never flown internationally. I'd never left the country. And I didn't even know where the hell Costa Rica was located at on the globe. Like that is just like the perception of my personality. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's going to be fine. Like I'm just going to wander around and I'll ask someone if I need some help.
See, and you're doing fine so far. So you're a perfect testimony to that statement. Yeah. Before we get too deep, because I want to hear more about your career and what business aspirations you're working on right now. I know you had some inspiration kind of to drive you forward into who you are now and what you're doing. So tell me a little bit more about where that came from and how it helped you transition into where you are currently today.
So I love to share this. I honestly should probably write like a blog post on it because it's wild what someone that you listen to on the internet can do for you. I definitely had really limiting beliefs growing up. Like I thought you got the job. I mean, you were all sold the same dream here. You get the job, you work the job, you get married, you get a house, we live happily ever after. Mm-hmm. My personality didn't coincide with the dream that we were told. So I was working as a data analyst for Wagner Equipment, which is a Caterpillar dealership in Colorado. My dad had helped me get the job. Like I would not even have gotten an interview if it wasn't for my dad. So my parents played a pretty big role in that. So they were not thrilled when I made some decisions that I made. And I had some influence from a pageant coach that had done, she was Miss Wisconsin 2009. So Alex Worley, and she had led me, it's funny how one person leads you to another one. She had led me to a girl named Lauren Everett's of the Skinny Confidential. And I started listening to their podcast, which was truly atrocious at first. Like if you go back to their first episodes, it makes me feel like I'm a podcast legend. Like it was bad and they're hilarious and I love them, but I was like, this is fucking terrible. So I turned it off and then came back at like episode 10 and it got really good. And Lauren always talked about how she was working as a bartender and teaching Pure Barre and teaching Pilates and started this like the Skinny Confidential, which is now a really big brand that, I mean, she made that entire thing, which is awesome. And I just kept listening to it and listening to it and listening to it, like her story and her journey and then her husband's, and then they would bring people on and talking. And I finally just started realizing like, hey, self-awareness here. You are your own problem. You are the reason that you don't like this job. Are you going to do anything about it? And it definitely inspired me to quit that job. Mind you, I did some things that parents wouldn't approve of, like I quit the job without having another job. Don't do that, kids. I just realized like there was people around me and I loved the people I worked with, but I was the youngest person and I heard people complaining
Mm-hmm.
every day about like their jobs and their lives and like living for the weekend. And I just like got a little light bulb that was like, yo, are you planning on living like this? Because if not, you need to get out and you need to get out now.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my 2 weeks in. They wouldn't let me put my 2 weeks in. They were like, hold up, girlfriend, get back in here. Like, you're the only person that we've had that we liked in this job. Like,
oh, no.
thank you so much. And I was like, I'm literally working. I was working 45 hours a week there and having to work Thursday nights at Texas Roadhouse and all day Saturday, like, and still wasn't making enough money. And I was like, this is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going in debt. My credit card's racked up. Like, this is awful. So I finally get to quit. They finally let me quit. They sent me an email finally and gave me like 7 options. And I was like, same option, quitting. I'm going to need to go interview for a restaurant job, but I'm quitting. And I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm going to do something. My initial plan was like, I was going to go into real estate, which is so cute of me to think now, because my personality was not this like firm in who I am. And I had no negotiating skills and stuff or like confrontation. I bought 2 real estate tests to take online in Colorado to like learn. I never did any of them. I started and I truly think I will end up with a real estate license in Florida and Colorado at some point, but it will be like, I'm a lot more put together than I was at 22-year-old me. And I finally was like, okay, I'm working this restaurant job. I'm like, well, this isn't going well. Like I would never aspired to work in a restaurant. It was money and it was a way for me to have different flexibility. So, and I love people. Like that's my thing is I love people. So I was like, okay, you've wanted to start a blog. Same thing. I thought about it for a year. And I just like marinated this idea in my head for a year. And I was like, dude, rip off the Band-Aid. Like, nobody cares. Like, just do it. So I bought one website, couldn't figure out how to run it because I'm not that tech savvy. So I had to move over to Squarespace. And here I am still on Squarespace. And that kind of started everything. Like I started blogging and started doing things I enjoy. And then in turn, ended up with someone coming into the restaurant who worked in roofing and needed a marketing girl and they could work from home. So that work from home thing really like, woo, that sounds good to me. I want to work from home. So I was like, okay, started teaching Pure Bar. And then slowly everything just kind of like,
fell into place.
Yeah, like it worked out that, and don't get me wrong, there was some really shitty times transition into that from like marketing to what I'm doing now, especially with the boss that I had at the time. I was dating my boss and I was needless to say I'm employed and he's not. So let's just keep that in mind. Yeah, and this was also right as I won Miss Colorado as all those transitions happened. So it was a lot for me as a person to take on. Like I did work for free for like 6 months. So it's something really important to remember too, is like, you may have to like, for lack of nicer ways to say it, like eat some shit sometimes if you want like a different life. But it helped me realize that I had the potential to have a life that I wanted. And I was capable of getting it if I just like didn't quit. And I was like, oh, this is like a concept. And I kept learning and learning and learning. And within, I don't know, January of what did we compete in Miss USA 2019? So January of 2019, I think, they had asked if I wanted to be like the full-time, what is called supplementing. And then eventually I ended up like opening up an LLC because the guy that I worked for, and I still do all of their stuff, wanted to pay me as a business. And I was like, well, I'm the perfect person. You tell me to open a business and I take this to a whole new level.
I love that.
So yeah, it hasn't been easy. It's never easy. I mean, you have to be patient. You have to be so confident and you have to be like firm. Like, I mean, you know me well enough to know this. Like I have a strong personality and there's still times that I get ran over and I'm like, you can do it. Like don't take this shit. You're going to have to call them back.
Totally. I think seriously admire you so much for making those moves, and it just shows too that you're in control of what you want to do. Like if you don't like your job, change it. If you don't like where you're living, change it, and you have that authority and you can make those changes in your life. Obviously, it's not always easy. Finances play a big role. It might not even be necessarily capable at certain seasons of people's lives, but it is possible, and stick through the dirt, and obviously you can get there, and things fall into place just as they should be. And I know your industry you're in now is pretty heavily male dominated. How is it kind of breaking through that mold and working in that male dominated industry?
I would say it's definitely not for everyone. Especially if people happen to Google what I look like. If you're talking to me on the phone, it's not a big deal. People meet me in person, and it's like a little bit different of a perception. I think it was Dolly Parton. She made a really good statement one time about it. Like, people always think I'm a dumb blonde who's not going to take the money. And before they figured out I did anything, I went and took all the money. Like, that's a really good perception of me. I'm like, that's fine. Like, you can 100% think I'm a dumbass or some cute little blonde who's never going to like know what's going on, but you're going to be wrong at the end of the day. Like, I do a lot of work to know what I'm doing and to continue to grow and pay attention and find better ways to articulate things and to just be super, super thorough. Like, I don't think I deal with any women, to be honest. Like, out of like my contractors or like salespeople or anyone else I work with, they're all men. I think there's a lot of room for women in this industry, but you are going to have to, like, it takes a special type of confidence and backbone and like support group. Like, I talk to my parents a lot, and I learned that if I don't stand up for myself, I mean, this is even with pay. Like, people are always like make fun of salespeople of being like a bulldog or something. I will go at you if you're not paying me. Like, people have a hard time talking about money, and I'm like, no, I need paid. If you need me to do anything, I need a check in my bank account.
Yeah, and don't you feel like sometimes when you have like these negative type of stereotypes surrounding maybe your looks or just who you are in general, it almost makes you want to work doubly as hard to be smarter, more knowledgeable about what you're selling or what you're doing, and just kind of be the best in the room and show people that, I'm more than a pretty face, or I'm more than what you think I am, basically.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I was at a training in Dallas, and I'm sure like the perception was like, hey, Barbie showed up, because one, it was cold. I was wearing the same outfit I wore the day before because the other days I didn't have warm enough clothes packed for. And I was leaving that day, so I had like my pink suitcase and my pink bag on top of my suitcase, and like just like living my life. And that finally they were like, what do you do? Because I hadn't said much, and I like explained to them what I did, and they were like, oh, we would have never guessed. And I'm like, yeah, probably not, but like, that's fine. And it does, and it makes you, I think it makes you work harder. And I'm sure people feel like this in all industries. Like, if you feel like someone thinks you're not qualified or incapable, like, it gives me a little fuel to the fire to be like, no, here's all of my knowledge. Here's all of my certifications. Here's all of the things that I've done to make sure I am so prepared and so ready for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just summarizing everything we've talked about, and obviously where you started and how far you've come, and definitely how much more is in store for you in the future. How do you feel like in this season of your life that you're kind of perfecting your purpose, or how do you feel like you're getting closer to it?
I am all about growth. So I like every day, I think that was the best thing that I ever got turned on to was personal development and just growing as an individual. So I think that's what I'm doing. And every like area of life, like I'm like, where can I get better? Like self-reflecting, even like enjoying life, because you know this about me as well. Like sometimes I will be so uptight that I forgot to like enjoy the moment because my brain was going 995 miles an hour. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Because that is my personality. So there's just like perfecting your purpose in like growth in all areas.
I love that. What would be your advice for someone who's still trying to discover what maybe their unique purpose is?
I would write down the things you like and realize that things you like don't have to like have anything in common. I'm reading this book right now. I wish it was on my desk. And it's called Steal Like an Artist. And it's a lot about creativity. And I have like my main business has nothing to do with creativity. There's nothing creative about it.
Yeah.
Like nothing. And then like my blog and Instagram and like Monet and all of that is like connecting and creativity and everything that goes with it. And it made a really good point that like you can have so many things happening if you're able to handle them.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that connects them all is you.
I love that.
Yeah, it was one of the most incredible things. I think I just like clicked in my brain. I was like, oh, you're right. Like it doesn't have to be anything specific. And I love connecting with people. So
Mm-hmm.
even my abilities to like explain something to someone and them understand where I'm coming from, even in my non-creative like career path, like that's what I love. Like I want to connect with you on some level.
I love that.
Come on, just start finding out what you like.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even what you said before is still like really stuck with me about if you think about something multiple times and you're not doing anything about it, like obviously it keeps coming to your mind and you're still pondering and thinking about this, like obviously it means something to you. So like maybe dive deeper into those things as well.
Mind you, I also use that same motto when it comes to shopping.
So that's actually good.
That's my clothing motto. So like if I, for instance, there's a pink sweater at Lululemon that we saw last week that I walked by, looked at like 6 times and I was like, that's really expensive. Like it's probably not necessary.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about it. It's going to get purchased. Like I've thought about it long enough and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's how you avoid buyer's remorse though, right? So
yeah. And if you leave, like my thoughts are is if it crosses your mind once, it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Crosses your mind frequently, it's there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to find out. You just need to know.
You need it. You need to know. I'm so happy you joined me today, Madison. Can you just share with everyone where they can find your blog and follow you so they can see your journey and how you continue to grow in your purpose?
Of course. So everything is at Madison Dorenkamp. I think with the exception of Twitter, I think it's Maddie Dorenkamp because they don't let you have that many characters. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And then MadisonDorenkamp.net. And then I also have a podcast, which is the #OwnYourDifferent podcast, which Danica has been on and on that bad boy right now. So yeah, I would love for you to connect, follow, all of the things.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone, please go follow Madison and her journey. And if you like this, please like, subscribe, all the goodies, and tune in to our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.